they're not necessarily where they want to be, and they're going through a lot of stuff that sucks, and they feel like it's kind of beneath them based on their skill set and their knowledge that they have. But it was a stepping stone to get to your next success. And that's not to say like, oh, you want to rush through your time at Ohio State, because like you said, you enjoyed every second of it and you wouldn't trade it for anything. But I think that probably definitely helped keep that perspective of, okay, this is going to help me get from point A to point B where I want to go. Hello and welcome back to The Next Act, Season 2. My name is Keaton Hall, your host, and then I'm here with a new face and one that's going to be sticking around for a while, my new co-host, Matthew Roop. He was on the, I believe it was 6th act of the podcast of Season 1, but great guy, great friend and soccer player, captain, played with me. Well, not with me, played at Manchester University the same time period, and I can't think of someone else who I'd want to help co-host with me. So definitely a welcome to the pod, co-host Matthew.
Yeah, I appreciate the kind words, Keto. I'm super pumped to be on the podcast. I know we had a great discussion last time I was on, but I'm excited to kind of be more involved and help you as we continue to kind of grow this podcast and help young athletes out there everywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. I know it's something that you are passionate about with podcasting as a side kind of passion project. So I'm excited about this dynamic that we have, and as we go forward and have more guests on, and it's just going to be, like you said, hopefully growing it to have more of an impact, and we'll have a lot of fun while doing it. So today's episode is unofficially brought to you by Adam Silver. If you don't know who that is the commissioner of the National Basketball Association, who helped curate this current last time we'll see LeBron versus Steph in the playoffs instead of a Dylan Brooks versus De'Aaron Fox Grizzlies and Kings matchup in the second round. So shout out Adam Silver for that. Now, Matthew, in your life, have you always gotten everything you ever wanted at the exact moment you wanted it or felt like you deserved it?
Yeah, obviously no. I mean, I think I've been blessed. I've had a pretty good life, and I can't complain too much. But obviously, there are times where either you're in a situation where you're not ready to get what you want, or it's you just got to put in a little more work for it. So I think this is a phenomenal topic for us to cover today, and I think we both have some experiences that we can kind of help share with the audience here today, and kind of help them learn from our mistakes, or vice versa. And so I think this is a topic that we both kind of understand. We've gone through our battles, and we've come out on top. So it's an exciting topic for me to cover today.
Absolutely. Definitely agree in terms of this being a very relevant topic, not only for us, but also for, I would say, everybody, just because you grow up, patience and not getting what you want is something you learn at a very early age, unless you are one of the few that did not ever get told no. But
they are out there.
Yes. But for the vast majority, the concept we are talking about is working while you wait. And for those of you who read your Bibles, Matthew 25:23 says it's a story about some servants who had been given a small amount of money to take care of for their master. And when he came back, he told the ones that had handled it well, he told them, "You have been faithful over a few things, I will make you ruler over many." And I feel like that directly applies to this concept of working while you wait. And so, Matthew, what are we gonna get into with our first acts and how we kind of experienced it first?
Yeah, I think we both have a couple different scenarios where we've kind of experienced the situation, where we've had to work while we waited for our time. So I think, Keto, I'm going to ask you first, what kind of experiences did you, maybe, even earlier on, maybe in your high school career, did you kind of experience this, where you had to work while you waited for your time to come?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, growing up was never the most athletic kid, never the tallest kid, especially in basketball. And so it was rare that I started out on a team as anything other than somewhat underestimated a little bit. And so I was rarely given the benefit of the doubt in terms of not having to earn my time to begin with. And so growing up through middle school and all the way through junior high, I mean, there's not really a ton because everybody usually plays a lot just with the way coaches try and get people playing time at that age. But freshman year of high school, I got put on the JV team instead of varsity, and that was a goal I really had going into freshman year. But then that was something that I had to kind of put my head down and then just grind away and get better for the next season. So my junior year of high school, I transferred schools, and so it was kind of like the same thing, starting over, not really getting the benefit of the doubt because I was new. So I was still a six-man coming off of the bench, first one off, but it still wasn't where I thought I had wanted to be, obviously. And then as an underclassman, when I got to Manchester, I didn't get any meaningful or consistent minutes really until my last 2 years. I remember my freshman year, I came in thinking I was going to win freshman of the year. And then that's how every freshman kind of thinks or should be thinking. And then I ended up playing a total of 11 minutes. And I remember distinctly my freshman year, there was a point where I knew I was working just as hard, if not more than, well, I know more than the majority of my teammates, and I wasn't being given an opportunity to let that work show. And so my confidence was just so down. And there was a moment I realized that, okay, I knew I wasn't going to play at all this year. So like any hope of getting off the bench and getting more than that 11 minutes was kind of out of my mind. And so it was very hard not to just kind of throw in the towel and not even care about the season. But I remember it was in practice and I was on the scout team, and it was it was still the first half of the season, but it was kind of toward the midway point. I had thought, and I'm like, everything I do from here on out until next year, when I have a chance to prove that I should be playing, everything I do is going to be building toward that player that I want to be and the player I want to prove that can get those minutes. And so that really helped me shift my perspective all the way through that first year, helped me give every effort that I could and still have a attitude that I was able to enjoy that season, because it shifted from me trying to play and get as many minutes as possible to really enjoying the teammates that I was playing with and being able to support the team however I could. And it was something that lasted all the way to my sophomore year when I got injured. So all that work I'd put in the off season, all that work I'd put in during the season, because I knew I was building toward that sophomore year, everything felt like it was for naught, because ended up before the first game even started, I had a shoulder injury and I was out for the entire year. But I know you can speak to that in terms of injuries at Manchester. So tell me how you kind of first encountered that with injuries there.
Yeah, so like you, my career at Manchester was pretty injury riddled. Came in as a freshman. I missed half the season with a concussion, or the off season after my sophomore season. I got my first surgery on my hips. And then the off season, a year later after the surgery number 1 came surgery number 2. And you can attest. You saw me walking around campus slower than your grandpa out there, and that was a tough time for me. Just understanding, as this podcast has talked about over and over again. I think a lot of us put value into who you are as an athlete, whether that's good or bad. I think it's just the way a lot of us handle it, and not being able to participate, or in my case, barely being able to walk was a struggle.
Yeah.
What was a 5-minute walk normally took me 30 to 40 minutes, which was crazy. And it just felt, it was tough to just do regular stuff. And then, you see your teammates going and playing, and I have to stand off to the side, and I'm doing my physical therapy and all that kind of stuff. But just understanding and in the back of my mind, everything was, I understand I'm missing my spring season, but everything is to get back for August, right? Like, I need to be prepared for when we move in on campus. I need to be, back in shape. I need to be, game fit. And understanding that was the goal. While I hated missing those short-term things like the practices in the spring, and even playing intramurals with you guys or my teammates, like,
yep.
The goal was always to be ready for the fall. And so I think kind of how you had that mindset shift, that was something that it took me a little bit to figure out, especially after my first surgery, is just understanding what was really important. So it was a tough situation to be in. Seeing your teammates getting to train and do that kind of stuff while you have to be off to the side was definitely a trying time for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. When you were in the process of kind of like your first injury, is something that you are like, okay, this sucks, but then I'll be right back, and then we'll never really get injured again. And then the second one comes. Was that harder for you mentally to deal with than it was the first time?
Yes and no. So the second time was tougher because I thought I was past it. I thought I had the surgery that was going to fix all my problems, and then it kind of came back again. So it was frustrating in that sense. But on the flip side, I knew that I had already done it and I can do it again.
Yeah.
So it was kind of a double-edged sword where you're frustrated that it happened again and you thought you were past it and now we're back, kind of going backwards again. But in the back of my mind, it was like, well, you just did this, 9 months ago. Why can't you do it again?
Yeah.
So while it was frustrating, but I knew that I could come out on top because I had done it just, a couple seasons previous. So.
No, I love that point of, yes, it sucks, but you've been through it before, so you can do it again. And that's something that is really easy to forget after you're out of something, because I feel like, for me at least, if I don't have something that's kind of a consistent presence in my life and kind of the front of my brain, then it's easy to forget. Like it's really easy for me to forget the rehab, going through it sophomore year like you did, and all the little things that weren't really an issue before. So like with my shoulder, the stretching was the hardest part. Stretching the tendon out, and that was something that I never thought twice about in terms of range of motion. And then that was really the only thing we did the first like 2 months was just Spencer would be in the AT room or Jordan would be in the AT room, just literally pushing as hard as they could, just trying to stretch out my shoulder. And then like 1 pound weights that would be little circles or like eyes, Y's, and T's. Like those felt so hard. And
Absolutely.
that's part of the reason why I got the tattoo on my left side, just to remind myself that like you've been through it, and so anything that comes your way, like mentally, you've been through something like that. And it's not to say that going through an injury in rehab is going to be the hardest thing you ever do in your life, and so like you're good, but at the time, mentally, it felt like the hardest thing I'd ever been through at that point, just from a mental perspective. And so knowing that I have the capabilities to overcome something that is very difficult and something that's way out of my comfort zone, that in itself is something that I think is a great carryover, something to use from our first act and going into our next act.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I remember hitting a mental low when I was at physical therapy, and I looked over at the table next to me, and a 70-year-old woman was doing the exact same exercise. Like,
yep.
Like that hurts, right? Like I'm an athlete, I'm a college athlete, I'm in my prime, and me and grandma next to me are doing the exact same exercises, the same reps, the same weight, like everything is the exact same. Like that like I laugh about it now because it's funny, but at the time, like I looked over and I was like, this is what I am right now.
Yeah.
But just remembering where you were and where you need to get to, I think was what really kind of, that long-term vision really kind of pulled me out of that.
No, absolutely. And I think I forgot to mention at the beginning of the podcast, this is a part of a series that we're going to call Using Your First Act and Your Next Act. And so that's kind of where this directly applies. To kind of follow that up, after these really hard experiences that we had to go through with injuries, we came back and played arguably our best years of college athletics. And so being able to overcome something like that and be better and stronger and have the best performance in our careers because of it, not necessarily because of it, but like in spite of it, that's something that is directly applicable and able to be carried over as well.
And doesn't it feel that much sweeter though, looking back on it? You like saw where you came from, right? Like it feels that much better, looking back on it.
100%. Yeah, I mean, all the times, like you said, when you remember you were doing nothing, little weight, same weight as a 70-year-old grandma, as sweet as they are, it's just not the same athletic standards we were used to. And so being able to relish in that victory and knowing that you were able to persevere and overcome it is something that is hard to replicate with things that that aren't that. Like that is something so specific, that feeling of difficulty and then overcoming an injury like that. It's a very specific type of joy, and it's definitely fun to look back on.
Absolutely.
So as we went into our next acts and moved on from being a college athlete, what does that look like for you right now in terms of how are you able to work while you wait in this stage of life?
Yeah, sure. So, actually, now I'm back at Manchester as the assistant coach here. But last time we chatted, I was actually at Ohio State as the volunteer assistant over there,
Yep.
and that to me was the epitome of like work while you wait. It was, don't get me wrong, it was an awesome experience, and I wouldn't trade it for the world. But I mean, sometimes I felt like a glorified manager. Like I was picking up cones, I was inflating the balls before practice, I was, getting the pennies to the washing room. Like I was doing all the dirty work, and I understand that was part of my role, and that's why I was on staff, and I signed up for it. But for me, that kind of epitomized, working while you wait, and while a lot of great things came from that, obviously, and now I'm at a full-time position, back at my alma mater, and really enjoying coaching and then that kind of stuff. But for me, this last spring, it was pretty trying. There were times where I'm like, what am I doing? I just feel like anybody could be doing what I'm doing. But you know once again, you just got to think of the long-term goal, right? We're both in a situation where we're trying to climb the ladder, whether it's the corporate ladder or whatever you want to call it, right? We're both trying to get, higher up in the ranks from where we are. And for me, I had to understand that was a stepping stone that I needed to take. And obviously it was one that, a lot of people, and also, remembering that a lot of people would, kill to be in my shoes, right? A lot of
Yep.
people would have loved to be in that situation. So just putting things in perspective that I'm really blessed to be where I am, and I understand that this is going to propel me forward in my career path. But for me, there were some trying weeks during that where I wasn't sure. I was frustrated, like, why do I have to do this? Like, anybody could do this, like, I should be
Yeah.
doing something more. But it was an awesome experience, and like kind of like our injuries, like looking back on it, like it's awesome. But while you're going through it, it can be tough. I know
Absolutely.
you're in a little bit of a different situation, but have you had some similar instances in your line of work?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think, this is one of my favorite kind of questions and things to ask people is how they, like, what does it look like for you? Because for me, like, you see a lot of like motivational speakers and people that will tell you all these concepts, and like they're great and they're true and you have to be able to implement them, but you rarely see, okay, well, what does that look like and how are you actually supposed to implement that? And it's tough because for everybody it's going to be different, but then I feel like there's a lot of similarities. So like in your situation, like that's something that is so applicable to people that are in coaching, but also they're not necessarily where they want to be, and they're going through a lot of stuff that sucks, and they feel like it's kind of beneath them based on their skill set and their knowledge that they have. But like you said, I believe in our episode you said it was a stepping stone to get to your next success. And that's not to say like, oh, you want to rush through your time at Ohio State, because like you said, you enjoyed every second of it and you wouldn't trade it for anything. But I think that probably definitely helped keep that perspective of, okay, this is going to help me get from point A to point B where I want to go. And I feel like I'm in a very similar situation with busy season hours. For those of you who don't know, in public accounting, January through April or May, you work a lot of hours. Like right now, there were a few weeks that I worked 70, 75 hours, and that was pretty much the only thing I did. And like to the normal person who's working 40, that's almost double hours. And that's not me saying it to brag or anything like that. It's just, if you're not used to it, it can be really difficult to say why you're doing it in the first place. And so for me, having this concept of working while you wait, and this is all part of the development cycle of things. I think of the same thing my freshman year. Okay, I'm not really enjoying the direct result of what I have to do right now. And for me in basketball, it was being scout team, filling up water bottles and never getting any playing time, getting the last pick of jerseys and shoes and whatever. but I was still able to work on my skills and develop a lot of great relationships during that time, so that I was ready to take the next step. Because as there were a lot of things that I was ready to do my freshman year, but there was also, I recognized a lot of things I wasn't able to do. And so a lot of it was my fault. Obviously, I'm not going to say put everything on a coach or things like that, but it's the same thing now with my job. As an auditor, being a senior associate, I'm in charge of basically the entire file and delegating work to associates that are beneath me and having them do all the work for certain sections so I can review it, and then getting things ready for manager and partner reviews and making sure that things are good and it's not just poorly done work to go up to manager and partner review, because that saves them time and saves us time in the long run. And so it's a lot of work, but it's a lot of development and a lot of skills that some of it I can see right now. So like project management is a skill that I was shown that I need to work on, but it's also something that I thought I was good at, and I'm still good at it, but it showed me there's a lot of room for growth. But there's also a lot of things that I know I'm not going to realize I learned until a year or two down the line, because of all of these hours and all of these experiences and opportunities I'm getting put into in order to develop into the person I need to become to get to the next stage of where I want to go. And so that's kind of what it looks like for me, the working while you wait. And I mean, with his podcast too, because that's something that in our 20s, you don't want to just wait until your 30s to realize, oh, I have to like go live. Like you want to set up yourself in your 30s and 40s by putting in the work right now. And there's a lot of things I know that you and I are willing to sacrifice and give up, in terms of, it'd be great to get off of a 40-hour work week and just not do anything and just watch TV. But I know you and I have a longer term vision, and being able to recognize that it takes what it takes and you have to put in the work right now while we're waiting for those things down the road. I think it's something that is very applicable to everyone in our position, especially the athletes that have encountered that concept before.
Yeah, I think a key point that you hit there, and you didn't quite phrase it like this, but like kind of like respecting the process, right? You hit on some points where you were good at project management, but you understand that there's growth, right? That's part of respecting the process. You understand that you're not quite all the way there, and maybe you are, you have standards above, what your current role. That's awesome. I think everybody should. You should think, that you are capable of doing more. But I think understanding, where you have room to grow is a huge step in that process, and understanding that there might be, a reason for where you are right now, which is phenomenal. And it's okay. Like nobody comes, out of the womb ready to just go roaring and be right straight to the top, right? That's not how this works. So understanding
Absolutely.
that, utilizing your current platform and current position to kind of, work on those tools and those skills that you need to kind of elevate your game then to the next step.
Mm. No, I love that. Definitely a great way to rephrase it. And, it's just something that I feel like a lot of people can take, even if they haven't realized it. We're not the Philadelphia 76ers, but we still trust the process, right?
Yes, sir.
So going along with that, how did you figure out what kind of working while you waited looked like in your next act? And I know we kind of touched on it a little bit, but was there something that you did in terms of a thought, like, okay, how can I make sure I'm working in this process? Or was there a moment that you realized it, or was it just kind of something you were doing and then it just kind of gradually happened?
Yeah, I think for me, it's just something that I kind of did. For me, when times are tough or things aren't going my way, my first solution is just put my head down and control what I can control, right? You can always control, the effort that you put in and that kind of stuff. And, my next act, I'm looking for opportunities, anything I could do to help the team, right? If that was filling water bottles, great. If that was, picking up bibs, if that was awesome. If that was helping scout, cool. If that was making a practice plan, awesome. But just continuing to look for ways that I can help improve the team. Funny enough, like one of the biggest, pats on the back I got when I was leaving from Ohio State was was the work I did on social media, right? Like that doesn't really necessarily, it doesn't hand in hand affect, the on-field stuff. But, the guys felt better about it, right? They enjoyed it. And maybe it had an effect. I don't know, but like, some they appreciated the stuff that I didn't think they would appreciate as much. And so sometimes just understanding that even the little things you do can have a bigger effect on some of the other people. So sometimes it's just best to kind of put your head down and go to work, even, whether you're in a spot that you want to be in or whether you're not. But for me, it's
Hmm.
just, I was just trying to do anything and everything I could to help the team and to win games and win championships. Like, that's always the goal.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. And that reminds me of, and I've seen a lot of people in our generation. And this is not a knock on our generation at all, but it's become more popular to kind of job hop, and you're looking for the most money at a certain spot, and that's kind of your driving factor with everything. And I know a lot of situations and a lot of jobs that aren't necessarily as glamorous and don't necessarily pay as much. If you There's so much you can learn going through a job that is that requires probably more than what they're paying you. And that's not to say like you should accept like really bad pay, really bad salaries, but being able to weigh, okay, if I'm gonna get 50K or like 40K at this one job, and I'm gonna learn everything I need to if I stay 3, 4, 5 years, am I willing to do that and be better off and set myself up for the job that I really want and the next step in that progression? Or do I want to jump ship after a year and a half or 2 years and go to a job that has like a ten or $15,000 raise, but I'm not going to learn as much and they're going to rely on me more for what I have instead of being able to develop me more? And I think that the kind of concept in the quote, I can't remember who said it, but the quote was, a lot of people overestimate what they can do in a year and underestimate what they can do in a decade. And so it's just keeping that long-term perspective in mind and what we can accomplish if we put our head down and grind through a longer period than we maybe feel comfortable for. But it's just, and obviously I'm not saying you should do that in every situation, because I know there's a lot of bad work environments that is not worth it and you wouldn't learn as much anyway. But it's just something I feel like is kind of lost in a lot of discussions in our generation today.
What you just described was the real world transfer portal, right?
Oh my gosh, that's so true.
Like, that's what we're seeing in college athletics. Like, that's the world I live in right now. Like,
Yeah.
somebody goes to a school and they're not happy because they didn't play their freshman year and they transferred, right? I think we're gonna lose a lot of, tough-minded kids because they're not learning how to push through things. And obviously, like you said, similar to the job world, like, there are bad situations where kids need to get out. And I understand,
Yes.
if your coach leaves, then you should get to leave as well because you didn't, pick that coach. And there's obviously situations where you should transfer, but
Hmm.
you see it all the time where kids just transfer. Well, why? I'll talk to a kid. Why are you on the transfer? I didn't play as much as I wanted to.
Yep.
Well, and sometimes, it's okay. Like, maybe you don't fit the system or certain things like that. But a
Hmm.
lot of times it's just I'm unhappy. I'm unwilling to work, so I'll go find somewhere where I can play right away.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's interesting. It's changed college sports, and I think it's a carryover effect to the real world, right? People just
Hmm.
kind of always searching for the next best opportunity instead of enjoying where they are. The grass isn't always greener, but I think people expect that they can always find something better, and sometimes you just got to look in your backyard, and it's right there.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree. Like you said, there's a lot of nuance into it and every situation is different, but the initial evaluation process is not as that concept of, okay, I'm going to work a little bit longer and I can see if I'm able to push through this, then I'll have a really good situation. I don't feel like that's lost in terms of people are just looking for shorter term gratification sometimes, especially the past year or two. Like you said, the transfer portal, there are not every player is going to be in a bad situation and like they should leave. Like the insane, it's basically like free agency. And because it's being treated like that, I feel like our point is valid in terms of, okay, I'm just going to go somewhere else easier. Well, then a lot of times this year I saw like kids would hop in the portal and then they'd either be too late or no one wanted them. And so they'd either have to come back or they would lose their spot. And then it's just a really tough situation to be in.
Yeah, imagine like showing up to your job, telling them you're going to move jobs, and then you have to come crawling back because that's the only place you have, right?
Right? I know it's tough. But all right, are there times when you feel yourself kind of slipping out of that mindset and being like, okay, this sucks and I can't see an end to this? Like obviously I find that myself in like that a lot of times. do you find yourself kind of drifting away from that perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm sure you can attest with you being in a busy season, like, when the hours are long and you're on a road trip home and you're trying to watch film and you should be asleep and just how it is. And there are definitely times where like this sucks. I could be working a regular job or I could be doing different stuff. But yeah, I mean, absolutely, it can be tough to keep you grounded sometimes and but I'll kind of throw that back at you because I know this last month or two has been extremely tough, and I'm sure there were some trials and tribulations that you had to go through.
Yeah, for sure. It doesn't matter who you are. Like I try to be, as a person, I try to live with a lot of discipline and consistency. And I found myself this past busy season not being as disciplined or as consistent with a lot of things as I normally was or would hope to be. And I call it the busy season wall. About like mid-March or like end of March, early April, you hit this wall because you get used to working the long hours, January, February, and then as it's been like 2.5 months, 3 months, you hit a wall in terms of like, all right, I'm done. Like, I do not want to look at another financial statement. I don't want to look at another anything. I don't want to look at another Excel spreadsheet. I don't want to look at anything except like not that. But I find myself, I was going to ask you this question, but ways that I bring myself back out of that perspective and getting back in line with the working while you wait. A lot of it for me is making sure I have time to be disciplined, and because like the more you are disciplined, the more time you get back in terms of you're able to have a lot more free time if you stick to the plan. And so being able to have that perspective refresh and think about the things that I'm developing and things that are going to serve me down the road, and just spending quality time with people that I love and that are close to me. And something that, even if it doesn't feel as productive in the moment, like an episode of your favorite cartoon or favorite show, it's just something that can kind of take your mind off things and help you reset. That's something that I found to be particularly effective. Or like a good conversation with one of my people, like that for me, and obviously it's going to be different for everybody, but that's a way that I've found just is a very good reset, and there are a lot of really good refreshers when you have really good conversation with somebody.
Yeah, and I've kind of had this conversation with some of our guys in terms of like having a reset. Like, it's going to be unique for everybody, right? Like, there's no one size fits all, so you kind of have to, fit what works for you and your mindset. One thing that I kind of always turned to was looking at guys in a position where I want to be down the line who have gone through a similar path as me. So when I was at Ohio State, one of the assistant coaches there, he was a volunteer for a couple of years, right? He made his way, he snaked his way, and now he's at Ohio State as the goalkeeper coach, right? So having conversations with Trav about his path and seeing that what I'm doing has a path to success, right? Because sometimes you can think that it's a dead end, but understanding and having conversations with people who have been there, done that, and are kind of taking a similar path to what you're kind of going through. And now everybody's path is going to be different, obviously, but finding somebody with a similar path who is in a spot that you want to be is always a great refresher. Like, just reminding myself, like, I'm on a good path. This can lead to where I want to be. So just kind of using him as like not an end goal, but just kind of a proof of concept in a way that what I'm doing can get to where I need to be.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Definitely nice to have mentors that are older and have been where you are and have gone through what you've gone through. And that's something I think you love just as much as I do, being able to be that person for the younger generations as well. I mean, that's a huge point of this podcast. Like, there's not an age specific demographic that we're trying to target. It's whoever, because it's applicable to everybody, but I know a lot of times the younger kids are the ones that are going through it right now. Because my brother, he's graduating high school this year, and so like he played his last basketball game in March, and so like I've been there, you've been there. It's tough. And it takes a while a lot of times to get through that period afterward of not really knowing what to do. So it's definitely directly applicable to people we're trying to impact.
I'm still not through it. I just played in the alumni this last week, and I'm ready to suit up.
Dude, I feel that. I went back and I was able to play with Parker and the Williamston varsity team when I was back for his senior night, and it was so much fun because I hadn't touched a basketball like 3 months to 4 months during busy season, and it gives you the itch again. And it's this summer I'm hoping to play a lot more, but it's definitely something you never really lose.
Yeah, you get the itch, and then you wake up the next morning and you can't walk. So.
You get the itch, and then you get the sore.
Yep, absolutely.
All right, well, Matthew, this is your first episode as co-host. Is there anything you want to say is to kind of close this out?
No, I mean, I think, I hope people can take away from what we talked about here today. I think, everyone's situation is unique, but just finding, points that you can take a hold of, either this conversation or a conversation with somebody else, and kind of, putting your own twist on it and for your own situation is kind of the route to go. But I'm excited to be a co-host for Aikido, and kind of excited to see where it goes. So I thought it was a pretty good first episode.
Absolutely, I 100% agree. We're gonna have to get the logo changed so it's not just me. We gotta we gotta get some of our graphic design guys on that. But Matthew, thank you for being my co-host. I'm very excited, like you, to see where this goes, and going to be a lot of fun conversations we have with each other, but also with a lot of guests that we have this summer. We're hoping to be a lot more episodes, and excited to see where it goes, like we said. But until next time, let's make sure the best is still yet to come.